Hey everyone, this is Anthony. In this video we will be discussing how to divide real numbers. Alright, and in the previous videos we've talked about how to add, subtract, and multiply them. Now we're going to talk about how to divide them. Alright, and we're going to see the rules for dividing are very similar in the sense of our obtaining our final answer as we saw with the multiplication. When we have a negative, well, actually here, let's start with when we have a positive divided by a positive, our answer will be a positive. If we have a negative divided by a negative, our answer will also be a positive. Now, if we happen to have a positive divided by a negative, or a negative divided by a positive, our answers will be negative. And the way you can think about this is, well, remember that multiplication and division, they're inverses of each other. All right, so when we have something divided by something else, it's really saying this times this equals this. So positive times positive that we saw in the previous video equals a positive. Negative times positive equals negative. Positive times negative equals negative, and negative times negative equals a positive. All right, so it's the same rules as with the multiplication, but it's in a little bit of a different form. All right, and so we're going to see division in a couple of different ways. In one way, and we'll just hop into an example, is we're going to see it like this. Negative, here, let's do 30 divided by 6. All right, and what this means is the first number will always be the numerator. The second number, we're going to change the division into a fraction, and then divided by 6. So we're just trying to see how many times does 6 go into 30. If you know off the top of your head, that's great. Answer is going to be 5. Now, if you want to check this, you could have asked yourself, well, 6 times what equals 30? All right, and then from either the multiplication tables, you could have arrived at 5, or you can make 6 rows and add them up until you hit 30. So you could have done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, we're at 6. Okay, not quite 30. And then you keep going. Now we're at 6 and 6 is 12, not quite 30. And then you keep going, and eventually you get to the 5th row. You fill that up, and we see that this is equal to 30. All right, let's do another example. And in this case, we're going to do negative 8 divided by 4. All right. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to convert it into a fraction. And so this is the same thing as saying negative 8, because it came first, is in the numerator. Fraction divided by positive 4. And now let's get a sense for what our answer is going to be in this, whether it's going to be positive or negative. So we have a negative divided by a positive. We look up here in our table. Negative divided by a positive will equal a negative. And now we just have to focus on 8 divided by 4. Well, how many times does 4 go into 8? You can think of it like that, and we get our answer as 2. Or you could say, well, 4 times what is equal to 8? And once again, we get our answer is going to be 2. So negative because of the negative divided by positive. And let me make this negative 2. All right. Well, let's do a couple with fractions, just like we did in the previous video with multiplication. Let's say we have negative 3 divided negative 3 over 20 divided by negative 1 over 6. Okay. First things first. All right, we're going to make it into a fraction. Negative 30 over 20 comes first. This is our numerator. Then the division, long fraction, and then divided by negative 1 over 6. So this looks a little bit different than what we've seen before, but because before it was just a whole number divided by whole number, one fraction. But because we have a fraction divided by a fraction. Now it looks like we have multiple fractions within our big fraction. All right, and the way that we're going to handle this is, well, first, what I like to do, just like in the other ones, let's see what type of answer that we'll have, whether it's going to be positive or negative. We have a negative divided by a negative, and so we check, and we see negative divided by negative is a positive. So we don't need to pay any concern to these two negative signs. We just need to focus on the two fractions. Now, the best way in my mind to take care of this is, well, we don't want multiple fractions. All right, so what I do is I like to get rid of the fraction down here. And if you notice, all of these examples that we did up here, they're not technically fractions, but if you want to make them a fraction, you could think of this as divided by 1, 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 divided by 1. So even our answers are divided by 1. Everything's divided by 1. So let's get this so that it's equal to 1. All right, so what are we going to do? What are we going to multiply in order to make this equal to 1? Well, you're going to multiply by its reciprocal. All right, because whenever you have some fraction and you want it to equal 1, the way to do this is to multiply by its reciprocal. So you just flip the fraction. All right, AB divided by BA. The A is going to simplify with the A, the B is going to simplify with the B, and we're left with 1. All right, so just like we have here, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal. I'm not going to worry about the negatives. We already discussed that a negative divided by a negative is a positive, so you can pretend like those aren't even there. So the reciprocal is 6 divided by 1, but we have to be a little bit careful because we've affected only the denominator of this problem. We must also multiply the numerator by that same reciprocal from the denominator so that we haven't really changed the entire fraction. All right, so let's do some simplifying. We said whenever you multiply by the reciprocal, this is now equal to 1, okay? And now this, if you notice, this is the same type of problem as we saw in our last video with the multiplication. We're going to just make a long fraction. We're going to go right across, so 3 times 6 divided by 20 times 1. And we get 18 divided by 20. Excuse me. Now, to simplify this, we notice that both are even. A 2 can go into each of these. So 2 goes into 18 9 times. 2 goes into 20 10 times. And our final answer is 9 over 10. All right. Let's do one more of these pretty quick, and just like we did this. Let's say we have 1/4 divided by 5/3. Actually, let's make it negative 5/3. All right, get some practice with the positives and negatives. All right, so just like before, all right, we're gonna make it a one big fraction. 1/4 is in the numerator, negative 5/3 is in the denominator. Let's check to see what our answer is going to be in terms of positive and negatives. Positive divided by negative is going to be a negative, so we can put our negative right here. And now what we're going to do is, well, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal because we want the denominator to be equal to 1. The reciprocal, we just flip the order, multiply top and bottom. Okay. Now we know that anytime we multiply by the reciprocal, this will all be equal to 1. I'm not going to worry about the negative, all right, because we already took care of it and we put it over here. So we have 1/4 times 3/5. Extend the fraction. 1 times 3 is 3. 4 times 5 is 20. I hope this helps. If there are any questions, critiques, concerns, let me know.